Have you ever had a bad experience with a HR or the hiring manager and you started doubting if this is the company that you really want to work for? Helen shares with us a bad experience that she had with a hiring manager while she was interviewing for a position, and knowing that Helen is also a HR professional. She shares with us what are some of the red flags that you need to check out for when you're interviewing and how you can also learn from this experience. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to Daniel Mutuku Show, where I help professionals become successful in their careers. And if this is your first time here, I would like to ask you, please subscribe to my channel, press the bell button so that you can get to know each and every time I release a new video. You have just shared with me that at some point you had a bad experience with a HR when you were interviewing for a position, yeah?
Yes.
Would you just tell us how did it go?
All right, thank you. So a few years ago, I interviewed for HR position and I was the candidate of choice. And of course, I was very excited that this was going to be a new opportunity for me. And so, of course, as I was waiting for the call to now take it to the next level in terms of discussing, say, the offer and what else to expect, I had a patient in hospital who was critically ill. And so the phone call came when I was right in there. And the hiring manager called me, and what she wanted to establish is whether I was willing to take up the offer that she had suggested earlier. I was not very excited about it because I knew that they could do better. So I had tried to renegotiate and ask, would you be willing to go back to the drawing board and discuss it further so that we can at least meet halfway. So when she called me on this day, instead of asking me perhaps, how are you and is it a good time to talk, she quickly asked me whether I have come out of my Jonah attitude. For those who may be wondering what the Jonah attitude is, this is the reference to Jonah of the Bible who was swallowed by a fish. And she went on and she asked me, have you been swallowed by the fish, and then have you been pushed out by the fish? I found that very, very offensive. And of course, under the circumstances, I was also under a lot of distress. And I found it very unprofessional and very inconsiderate. But here's the thing. When I thought about it, I got thinking, if this is how the hiring manager is speaking to me, then what would I be expecting ahead? So needless to say, I never took up the position.
So what would you say would be some red flags for someone who is interviewing for a job to look out for, just to give them some idea of, is this a place that I would want to work in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so first you have to understand that the interview process begins from the time the hiring manager or the company representative picks the phone up to call you. So how they speak to you speaks highly of the organization, because that person is a representative of the organization. As you know, first impressions last long, so it's good to be observant. Now, if the person does not speak to you politely in a courteous way, then maybe that is something that you need to take note of, because perhaps it's what, on occasion, it's possibly what they would be representing, would be representative of the company, but then again, it could not be. It could be that the person is having a bad day. However, we all know that phone etiquette is important when you're speaking to people on a professional level. So that's one thing to look out for. The other thing is still when someone calls you on the phone, they need to at least ask whether it's a good time to speak to you, because you could be in a position where you can't speak. For example, you are in a very noisy matatu, you are in a meeting, you are handling a personal emergency. It could be different things. So someone should actually be able to ask you, is this a good time to talk, or when is the best time to have the conversation?
You are also in HR.
Yes.
If you were in such a situation, how would you do things differently? Or if you had an opportunity to advise this person who was giving you the call, how would you do things differently?
All right, thank you. So I will repeat again. When I make the call, I will always ask the prospective candidate whether it's a good time to have the conversation, or if I can at least have 2 or 3 minutes of their time just to express what it is I want to communicate to them. That is one. The second thing is that throughout the interview process, whether the candidate presents themselves in the right way or not. At the end of the day, you need to show dignity to that person. Be respectful to them in terms of their time, ensuring that when you tell the candidates that they need to be there for the interview at 9 o'clock, as a recruiter, as an interviewer, you also need to be ready at 9 o'clock. You need to have at least gone through the candidate's credentials so that you have a good idea of what it is that the candidate has done and as well what it is that you're looking for. The other thing is have the courtesy to give feedback once you have gone through the interview process. One of the ways I have practiced, even though maybe it is not something that a lot of people might choose to do, everyone has their style, is that there are times I will actually give a candidate feedback immediately after the interview. Why? Because you can see they have potential, but they probably haven't picked that up, or there's an area they need to improve on because it is literally disqualifying them from a very potential and good position. The third thing is that feedback. I will still talk about feedback again. Now, give feedback after the interview has happened, whether the candidate made it through the interview or not. And what the kind of feedback I'm talking about is being able to send a regret to them. I have spoken to a lot of aspiring candidates, and one of the things they have pointed out is being ghosted. And being ghosted is really the fact that you go in for an interview and nobody actually ever gets back to you. I think it's a very distressing thing for candidates. As it is, it's also very nerve-wracking to prepare for that interview and you don't have the courtesy to give them the feedback. And then there's a second part of the feedback where the candidate actually interviews for the job and they qualify for the next position, but you also don't give them feedback. That is very important, to give them feedback. Now, whether the feedback is good or bad, it makes all the difference to actually send that regret or whichever kind of feedback that you want to give to the candidate. And the other thing that you could do is also maybe keep the CV for later. And if you feel that you could consider them for a different position, then that's another way out. Or share out the CV to your network to help. After all, looking for a job is a daunting task. So if you feel that the candidate can be fitting for a different place, then why not push through on their behalf?
Thank you very much for sharing. I think that would go a long way to help our viewers and anyone who is in HR to see how they can be able to improve their practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If I could just add one or two items.
Yes.
Now, as a candidate, there's something else I just thought I should point out. You need to know your deal makers and your deal breakers. What that is you need to know what is acceptable to you. Before you even apply for that job, you need to understand what it is you're looking for in a job. So, for example, when you get the job or when you are told you're the candidate for the job, you need to know what kind of salary you'd be looking at, what is your minimum, and what, for example, is your higher point. Because if you don't, then you find yourself now either feeling like you are downplayed or you are played the wrong direction because you didn't even know what you wanted. Now, deal breakers is what is unacceptable. For example, you could decide a deal breaker for you is location, that you can't say move out of Nairobi because you have family commitments and maybe you're going to school and different things. That's very, very, very important for you. And then, of course, never ever compromise what you stand for. If you go for an interview and one of the things that you discover perhaps stands against your values, you need to ask yourself if that is something you're willing to accept or not, because the kind of treatment you get during that interview session will be very representative of the kind of organization culture you will expect in the future to come should you take on the job. Thank you.
Thank you for that, again, great addition. Yes. I appreciate.
Thank you.
I would really like to know, what is your experience with interviewing and HR? If you have had a good experience or a bad experience, feel free to drop it in the comments below and I'll be sure to read all of them and respond to them. And until next time, we are out. Also, take a look at this video on how to write a professional CV, and make sure you like this video, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. And until my next video, I'm out.